Hi there, my name is Steve Schwartz and I'm the founder of the LSAT blog. I've been coaching the LSAT for over 10 years now, and today I wanted to share with you some tips, some shortcuts for the LSAT reading comprehension section. In particular, I wanted to illustrate one of the major techniques I use to better relate to tricky topics or passages that frame themselves in more general terms. I wanted to make them more concrete and more real for you. So I'm going to go through the three longer passages from the June 2007 LSAT, which I've linked below this video. So before moving on, please download that PDF if you don't have it already, pull it up on your screen, and we can walk through some key lines from that passage together. I'd love to display the questions on the video, but LSAC is pretty touchy about copyright, even though they're giving this PDF away for free, and I wouldn't want to ruffle any feathers. So anyway, June 2007 LSAT, first reading comprehension passage about poetry and fiction and Rita Dove. If we go into the first paragraph of this passage, the key lines I want to focus with you on to start with are lines 8 through 11. Poetry should be elliptical and lyrical, and character and narrative events are the stock in trade of fiction. So they're setting up a contrast. Poetry is more maybe emotional. Fiction is maybe more concrete and rational with narrative events. I'm speculating here. I'm inserting a couple of little things that maybe are not in the passage itself, but reframing the topic for me is making it a little more relatable and real. So maybe for the poet, when they say elliptical and lyrical, I think back to college, I think back to high school, English class, the sorts of things I read, maybe Homer with the Iliad and the Odyssey, maybe Shakespeare, Romeo and Juliet. That's what I think of when I think of poetry. And then for fiction, I'm thinking John Grisham, legal thrillers, or maybe even Harry Potter with characters and a clear narrative structure. Big distinction between those. Then the passage goes on in lines, in particular 21 to 22, generic boundaries is the bias against writers who cross generic boundaries is diminishing, meaning that the lines are getting blurred. Some people write fiction in a poetic style maybe, or some people include more narration in their poems. That crossover, so I'm thinking of John Grisham writing narrative legal thrillers in a poetic style. Something like that, something crazy. That's what I want to think of when they bring in Rita Dove, who blurs the lines a bit in short. They say, for example, that she is, line 31, unaware of any purported danger lurking in attempts to mix the two. Line 38, she's not into this restrictive approach. She wants to include elements of both. So line 48, clusters of narrative details within the lyric flow. So lyric flow, but still narrative in nature. So that's a bit about how I caricature the passage with things that were not in it. John Grisham does not appear. Homer and Shakespeare don't appear, but I've never heard of Rita Dove, and I have heard of these other people. So I'm projecting them onto the passage just as a tool to make it easier to understand what's going on. So passage 3 talks about the internet, which is something that most of us are probably a bit more familiar with than the average LSAT reading comp passage, but that makes it a great place to use this technique so then you can apply it later towards more difficult passages, but I really want you to get a solid understanding of it here. So let's look in particular at the end of the second paragraph, lines 23 to 27, where we have a great opportunity to take something abstract and make it more concrete. So person A puts something online, then if person B links to it, is person B committing copyright infringement? We can take the very example of the June 2007 LSAT PDF. LSAC has put it out there online. They are hosting it, but they have published it out there for anyone to link to. I then link to it below this video. I give you the URL, but the file itself is hosted on LSAC's servers. So LSAC has put it out there for essentially for distribution. They're offering it for distribution as line 40 says, and my link to it as person B might make it easier for you to find that document, that file. But person A, LSAC, has offered it up available to be found. Then of course, they could always cut off access and then my link wouldn't work anymore. They could put a password on it, as the passage later suggests as well. But the bottom line is that by taking person A and person B and giving it a real world situation, then we can make it more relatable and easier to understand and have a handle on. So I hope you found this example helpful. It'll get a little more tricky in the following passage, which is about science. So let's go on to passage 4 now. And in particular there, I want to focus on lines 16 to 20. Again, the end of the second paragraph, because that's another opportunity for us to take something abstract and make it more real. So, analysis of samples can ID which kinds of plants produce the preserved pollen grains and when they were deposited. And this can help to supplement our evidence, correct things, etc. So, when I saw this, I immediately thought of Jurassic Park. Saw it a million times as a kid, love it, it's a classic, Jeff Goldblum is incredible. But here, we're not dealing with dinosaurs in amber. We're dealing with pollen in fossils. Doesn't matter though, we can easily substitute one for the other. By looking at samples, wherever they are, we can figure out things about what was going on during that time period. So if we have some big old fern, which I'm likely to imagine it was alive at the time of Jurassic Park, Cretaceous period, Triassic, whatever, Jurassic, of course. We have this fossilized pollen from some big, this big, like I'm thinking like tropical rainforest kind of plant. Then that could tell us, well, if we see it in the fossil, then we know it's from that time period that the fossil was created. This passage goes on to give the example of cereal grains. I don't really know about that. I can't relate to it, but I can relate to dinosaur DNA in amber. And that's what I hold on to as my projected example over the course of doing this passage. So again, these are just techniques to have in your toolbox. You can pull them out whenever you like to use them. They're available to you. They're not the only techniques, of course, and I'll link to another video below where I go over some other more basic reading comprehension techniques. This visualizing, caricaturing, giving examples is just one tool of many you can use in LSAT reading comprehension. Anyway, I hope you found this helpful. If so, please subscribe to be notified of new videos as I release them. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions about reading comp or other LSAT related topics. I'll be doing more LSAT reading comp videos in the near future because I think it's a topic that isn't covered nearly enough and students sorely need. So anyway, hope you found this helpful. Keep in touch. All the best and take care.